Welcome back to our year in review series. Where we're back with the linebackers episode, touching on the inside linebackers and the jack linebackers, and a room that's experienced a lot of turnover. In the weeks coming off the season, at inside backer, it was a breakout season for John Bullock. Kind of his put it all together. Had arguably, could have definitely have been in the conversation for all conference. If Nebraska had won a few more games, I think, he's potentially in that conversation. Makai Bear had a productive season, then capitalized on the opportunity he had and transferred up to the SEC to go play at Missouri. Vincent Shavers had a few flashes and then broke out in the bowl game at inside linebacker. We had Stephon Thompson, who had a productive season, then transferred with Tony White down Florida State. And then he turned to the Jacks room, where you had MJ Sherman, in his final year as a Husker, play some good ball, and specifically a few games where it felt like he really flashed off the edge. Prince William and Milan had a good year. Didn't really stuff the stat sheet by any means, but flashed off the edge, showed some good traits, and then ended up following his brother, who played his senior year at Ole Miss, to Ole Miss, for his own for the back end of his college career. And then, you kind of look across the room, you had Willis McGahee break out, another freshman from South Florida. It was a eventful year, I guess. So we can start with the inside backer room. Yeah, Steve, I guess we'll start here. How much credit does Rob Dvorak kind of deserve for the way the room is played this past season, over the past 2 years, and kind of the development we've seen from that room this year?
Well, I think he deserves a lot of credit because I think Rob Dvorak's a really good teacher of the game. Just the work that he did with John Bullock, somebody who was not an inside linebacker when he came to the program out of Creighton Prep a long time ago. He came in and was primarily a safety. He was in the defensive backfield, and all of a sudden, Rule shows up. Rob Dvorak shows up. They see him running around, and they're like, "Hey, let's try this guy at inside linebacker," and it stuck. And you're absolutely right, Tim. John Bullock had an incredible season: 70 tackles, 10 tackles for loss, 4 sacks. He had a pick six. He's breaking up five passes. He was really good. He was really really good, and I think a lot of it has to do with him learning the position under Rob Dvorak. So I think Rob Dvorak's a really great teacher, and we saw that with Vincent Shavers too. The coaches said it all season long when they were talking about Vincent Shavers. Does he know what he's doing out there as a true freshman 100% of the time? No, but he's playing at 110 miles an hour, and anytime you can get that out of a kid, you're halfway there. So yeah, I think Rob Dvorak has really kind of showed his chops as a coach. He did it with Javen Wright too, who wasn't just like John Bullock. He was an inside linebacker when he came to the program. He was a corner actually, 6'3" corner. Then he just kept growing, 6'4", 6'5". Tried out at safety, nickel, and all of a sudden he's showing up there right next to John Bullock, on third down situations at inside linebacker. So yeah, and then Makai Bear. What else can we say about him? I mean, he didn't play a single snap his first 2 seasons, and then Rob Dvorak gets his hands on him, and all of a sudden he's like a productive, consistently productive linebacker who spent time both at on the inside and then in the jack linebacker room too. So look, it's a room that the inside linebacker room is one that loses a lot of production. I mean, let's just go through the guys that are not returning, Tim, for the linebackers, inside guys, and the jacks. So John Bullock gone, Makai Bear gone, Javen Wright gone, but there's potentially a little bit of Rob Dvorak during an interview after a bull practice. He said that the team is working on getting Javen Wright a seventh year. So we'll see what comes of that. But as of right now, we'll just stick him into not returning. MJ Sherman not returning. Steph Thompson not returning. Prince Will Umam Yellen not returning. So that group right there, Bullock, Bear, Wright, Sherman, Thompson, Umam Yellen, together for the 2024 season, they all combined to record 222 tackles, 25 tackles for loss, and 9 sacks. So that's a lot of production that's not coming back anymore. And that's it's going to be this way in college football from now on with the transfer portal and the player movement. It's unprecedented. So what do they have back? Vince Shavers is coming back. Roger Gradney, who was a true freshman, tore his ACL in the pre in a fall camp practice. He started out as a safety. He moved down to linebacker. Gage Stanger is returning. Dylan Rogers, as of right now, is returning. Vincent Genatone is returning, the walk on. And then the new faces. Marquise Watson Trent, the transfer from Georgia Southern. We can talk more about him. He's going to be incredibly valuable, especially for Vincent Shavers, in my opinion. And then Christian Jones, a four-star recruit in the 2025 class. So yeah, and then with the Jack linebackers, Ishmael Smith Flores has entered the transfer portal. He's gone. MJ Sherman, we already talked about, and Principal Umam Yellen, we already talked about. Returning Jack linebackers, Vincent McGahee, Maverick Noonan, and then we can talk some about Deshaun McCullough, the transfer from Oklahoma and Indiana before that. We'll see where he lines up. I mean, that guy's crazy. He can play everywhere. So yeah, they lose a lot. The linebacker room loses a lot. But with a coach like Rob Dvorak, who I think is a really good teacher of the game, I think they're going to be all right. Especially, we need to talk about him more. Marquise Watson Trent from Georgia Southern, the transfer, defensive player of the year in the Fun Belt. So that was a massive pickup, not only for on the field, but off of it with Vincent Shavers. And now he has an old guy to learn from, just like he did with John.
Yeah, I think right now I feel a lot better or feel confident in the inside linebacker room, in particular, just with the guys they're adding to the room, and kind of what that room could look like, with another offseason with Rob Dvorak leading them in John Butler's defense. I think Marquise Watson Trent's a guy that is in line to start and play a lot of snaps for Nebraska. I think Deshaun McCullough is as well, but kind of where that is remains to be seen. I think the addition of Watson Trent gives you the flexibility to kind of line up McCullough at a couple different spots or fully settle him down at Jack and kind of have him focus in on one position, sort of for the first time in his career. So I'm interested to see what Nebraska does there, but the addition of Watson Trent cannot be understated. I said it on radio. And by the time it's coming out, it's going to be a few days ago. But I said it on radio. I think Marquise Watson Trent. I'll call it now. I think he's a single digit candidate. I
Oh,
think
yeah.
I think three of the single digits come from the linebacker room. I think him, Vincent Shavers, and Deshaun McCullough all have single digits. Kind of a week before the season whenever they announce those.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree. I mean, 3 straight seasons with Watson Trent of over 100 tackles. He's just been productive. He's coming in as a 6 year guy. This is his last season in college football, so I could absolutely see him. I mean, that's an easy pick to have him come in and be a leader right away and do everything the right way. Just kind of like have that Jamal Banks type impact of an old veteran guy coming in who's been around college football and kind of just being the old guy, the veteran, somebody that the younger players can learn on. I definitely see that Marquise Watson Trent is going to be a single digit guy too. I mean, his tackle numbers for his career, his 5 seasons at Georgia Southern: 363 total tackles, 26 tackles for losses, 6 sacks, um, 6 forced fumbles. That should get Husker fans excited. He really attacks the football. Watched a little bit of him, and then just he's already, everybody always kind of makes that little minor joke of, he already knows how to win football games in Memorial Stadium, because in 2022, when Georgia Southern came to Lincoln to play the Huskers, they beat Scott Frost's Nebraska 45 to 42 or something like that. Frost fired the next day. So Marquise Watson Trent had 10 tackles that night, and he was all over the place. I remember that. I remember that game and that linebacking core for Georgia Southern. I just remember they looked very cool. I was out there for pregame warmups, and they all had the white eye black. And so I just thought that was like, dang, these dudes came ready to play, and they did, and they beat and they won that game. So yeah, Marquise Watson Trent right now. You can maybe talk about like Dane Key, Deshaun McCullough, great picks for like biggest impact player. But like, let's not understate what Marquise Watson Trent means on the field and off the field, like in the meeting rooms, because I think that's absolutely massive, especially for a pretty special, who's looking like a pretty special player in Vincent Shavers.
For sure, and those other young linebackers too. Roger Gradney's obviously a guy
Christian
that
Jones.
Christian Jones, but yeah, more so that the 2025 class, Christian Jones, Dawson Merritt, Pierce Mooberry, those guys can afford to learn from someone like Marquise Watson, Trent, and Deshaun McCullough. I think Deshaun's going to provide
Yeah.
really good insight for some of these guys. Specifically, I think Pierce Mooberry could
Yeah.
have a lot to learn from another lengthy but somewhat lanky defender that can play a couple of different positions in the back end of the defense. Kind of looking at this room, kind of how confident are you in the Jack room, kind of with some of the departures and what they have returning? Again, and with some of the questions about where Deshaun McCullough plays. Do you think they can afford to add another name or two to the room? Are you comfortable with where they're at? And I think another conversation worth having with the addition of Philip Simpson, a true outside linebackers coach, and they made sure to, make it known he's not a Jacks coach, he's an outside linebackers coach. I mean, I personally think we're going to be in a world where Nebraska's going to be playing with two outside linebackers more often than not. Potentially two inside linebackers. A lot of 3-4 when they're against run heavy first teams. Kind of like we saw against Boston College
Yeah.
um, and
The
what we
stuff
saw
against
against
Boston
Iowa as
College.
well.
Hmm.
But moving forward as well, I think we're also going to see a lot more penny front, where it's three down linemen, two outside linebackers, one inside linebacker, or two down linemen, two outside linebackers, and two inside linebackers. I just think we're going to see a lot more of the outside linebackers. And where are you at with the room if we are going to see a couple more of those guys on the field?
So a lot of it really with the Jack linebacker spot, the outside linebacker spot, it really depends with me on just like where they decide to put McCullough because McCullough can play inside, he can play outside, he can be that overhang defender that quarterbacks have to read. He can play in space at such a big body, 6'5", 230-ish pounds. I mean, that guy just looks like a creative player, like that I used to make when I played at those old NCAA football games. But you know what? It's okay. The Jack linebacker room, like it's okay. Like I understand Willis McGahee. He is a star in the making. He has a lot of potential, and he's not the biggest outside linebacker slash Jack in the world, but he makes it work. I mean, he's got leverage just because he's kind of on the shorter side. But he's got the athletic traits and the pass rushing skills to really make an impact again. Um, on a more consistent basis. We don't want to see like what happened with Principal Umamian and Cam Lenhart from their true freshman year to their sophomore year. There was kind of like maybe a step back, some would say. But that should be the thing with Willis McGahee is how does he take that next step and not fall into the sophomore slump type second year. But behind Willis, there's Maverick Noonan. I mean, he came off that knee injury and was healthy for most of the season in 2024. But I just don't quite know a ton about him as a college player. Like I watched him at Elkhorn South. I understand that he was a really good player over there, but when it comes to being a college football, edge rusher, Jack linebacker in the Big Ten, we just haven't seen a lot of him. So I understand that the coaches would maybe want to potentially, keep an eye on the portal and see if other outside linebacker type bodies come available because I think that Nebraska could use that potentially. Just to, but again, all this kind of goes away if they decide to put Deshaun McCullough, as a Jack linebacker, Jack linebacker, outside linebacker, just because he's so versatile. He can hold his own on the line of scrimmage. He can play off the ball. He can do a lot of things. So yeah, and then Dawson Merritt, Pierce Mooberry. We'll see where they put Pierce Mooberry. He can, again, you mentioned it, Tim. He's kind of like a mini Deshaun McCullough, just kind of learning and getting healthy. I know he tore his ACL senior year of high school. So and then Dawson Merritt, he needs to get in the weight room. He needs to get bigger. And that'll come. He's a really good player, obviously talented recruit. So yeah, it's the Jack linebacker room's okay right now. I think it's okay, but I wouldn't be surprised, and I think it might be worth it to continue looking in the transfer portal and see if anybody's out there. Maybe Maurice Westmoreland. He could come in from UTEP. I mean, the coaches obviously saw him in the season opener in August when they played UTEP. Maurice Westmoreland is an NFL player in my eyes. Matt Rule sure did when I asked him about it before that game. So we'll see what comes of Maurice Westmoreland. But yeah, it's an okay room right now.
Yeah, it's not bad. I
It's
want
not
to ask you
bad.
as
No.
well, kind of where looking back on the 2024 year. what did you think of the evolution of that room across the season? Because it felt like we saw new faces, we saw new names emerge. We entered the year like, okay, I think this is going to be Prince Will's room and MJ's room. And Prince Will, flashed a good bit, but like the snaps felt like they started to get cut down across the year just because of kind of inconsistent play off the edge. We saw more Willis McGahee. I personally didn't expect as much Willis McGahee as we got this year.
No, me neither.
But he flashed and he looked good when he played. And I also feel like the role of that room kind of changed and evolved as the year went on. Kind of looking back on the year, um, it kind of feels like a position on the defense where I don't know what the future holds and what it looks like for that room.
Yeah.
Are they going to be more pass rush heavy moving forward, or are they going to ask those outside linebackers to drop into coverage a little bit, play
Hmm.
more of that traditional 3-4 outside linebacker, or even that penny front outside linebacker, where you do ask them to kind of drop back in coverage a little bit, kind of surf off the edge and kind of read and react. Kind of where do you see this room going, and kind of what did you see in 2024 from such a unique room, I guess?
Yeah, so going into the room, I figured it was going to be MJ Sherman, Princewill Umamiel, and those were going to be the top two guys. MJ was really good against the run and kind of attacking those offensive tackles. Princewill Umamiel, we know what he brings as a pass rusher. So I thought those two guys were going to go. But as the season went on, MJ played a lot, and I think it's because he had a really good final year. He's just a strong, smart veteran player who was pretty impactful out there, whether you noticed him or not. I mean, sometimes it's hard to notice the guys who are taking on blocks, so whether's behind him can get a tackle. So I thought MJ Sherman did a lot of the dirty work and even showed up in the stats. I mean, he had 5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, and 29 tackles. Those have to be career highs for him after not playing a whole lot at Georgia. But then I think we just saw Willis McGahee maybe just like practicing better because Coach Rule kind of alluded to that with Principal Umar Mielen with, when you're talking about going from that true freshman season to the sophomore, there needs to be a jump. And the jump comes at your effort level at practice, how serious you take, everything off the field, your film study, your film review, all that stuff. And I think Willis McGahee may have shown better things in that area than Principal Umar Mielen did. That's the vibe I got anyway from listening to the coaches talk about the situation. So that's good news for Willis McGahee, and then Principal Umamian, maybe just a change of scenery needed. He's off to Ole Miss to play where his brother just had 10.5 sacks. So we'll see what comes of that. But yeah, I don't know what this position is going to look like under John Butler. I did like all the different type of fronts that John Butler showed against Boston College in the bowl game. And to Tony White's credit, I mean, he was showing different looks as well. But I think they were using those kind of jack linebacker, outside linebacker bodies on the field at the same time. And Tim, like you said, sometimes they were on the edges of the defensive front with like with 2 true defensive linemen. Sometimes there were 3 true defensive linemen with 2 jacks out there creating that 5-man surface. So there's a lot of different things that I liked about that bowl game. I thought it was cool to see all the different things. And yeah, I don't know what the room is going to look like or going to be asked to do in John Butler's defense. We'll have to talk about that for spring ball. But I mean, I I'm bullish on John Butler as a DC, and especially um just what his defense is going to look like in the Big Ten compared to Tony White, a seasoned veteran who's been doing this for consecutive seasons. Now John Butler finally gets his time. I'm sure it's and what Phil Snow is going to bring too, as kind of that overseeing guy, just helping out. I really I'm bullish on it. I think I like it more than others, I guess, when John Butler was announced as the next DC. So, but yeah, with that outside linebacker room with Phil Simpson doing it, we'll have to just wait and see what it ultimately looks like. But I don't think it's going to be too drastically different than what we saw in the bowl game. Do you?
No, not at all. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I'm interested to see kind of how many different fronts they have and what this all mean. Like specifically the addition of Deshaun McCullough. Like that is
Yes,
such a versatile chess
he's
piece.
huge.
And it's an intriguing, like, okay, what is the vision now for the defense? Because that's a guy that you can line up at a couple of different spots and kind of changes the math a little bit in how you play defense. You can kind of build a defense around that guy because of how versatile he is and how many different, you play a Penn State next year. You line him up on, they always have good tight ends. You line him up against their best tight end and you ask him
Hmm.
to neutralize. And then when you play, a Michigan, you have him up front, offensively defending the run, reading and reacting. Depending on who you play, you can have him line up at a few different spots. Have him pressure the quarterback at times because he's shown a little bit there. You like him in coverage a lot. You like him as a run
Hmm.
defender. You like him taking on blocks. He can do so many different things. And again, like the biggest thing with him is he's got the size and athleticism to cover, like in space. Like he can potentially even be your rover, hypothetically.
Hmm.
Like there was a world where coming out of high school, people kind of saw him as a big safety. So
Hmm.
I'm interested to see what Nebraska does with him and that room. I'll say this too. I think looking at the inside linebacker room, I'm expecting more blitzes. I'm expecting more, and this is a good room where when you look ahead at some of the quarterbacks they could face next year, you potentially Bryce Underwood or Mikey Keene at Michigan, Brendan Sorsby at Cincinnati. You look across from Malik Washington at Maryland. You have a good group of QBs you're facing, and QBs that can run a little bit. And you have a room now that's kind of athletic enough to spy, to blitz, and to potentially trigger when they need to. I mean, we saw it from Vincent Shavers in that
Yeah,
bowl game. That's not a designed blitz. That's not a late
that was a
blitz.
green dog.
Yeah, that's just no. That's not even that. That's just him making a play, him being in coverage for a second, realizing he's got a free lane at the quarterback and taking it. And I think we're going to see more of that, where it's like, okay, hey, somewhat of like a QB spy, where they're like, okay, hey, if the lane's there, you take it. And I think they have the linebackers out there to execute that. Marquise Watson Trent, in his own right, can rush the passer a little bit. Vincent Savers, we've seen him do that. I don't. I think the room's lost some depth, but I think, and maybe you disagree with me. I think the top end talent is better than it was in 2024.
Um, yeah, so you'd be putting John Bullock and Javen Wright up against Vincent Shavers and Marquise Watson Trent right now. Would that be like the two versus two?
Yes,
Yeah, I mean, there's just yeah, like Watson Trent just means so much in my opinion, just his experience level. So yeah, you kind of like take him and John Bullock, and Watson Trent's been playing on the field a lot more than John Bullock has in his career. So, and then just the upside that Shavers, that physicality, the aggression that Shavers brought. Yeah, I mean yeah, I can see that, Tim. I can really see that. But you're right, behind them, behind Shavers and behind Watson Trent, what's that rotation going to look like? You got Gage Stenger in there. Dylan Rogers is still with the program. Vincent Genatone played a ton of special teams. He's a fast, athletic, hard hitting dude, who wanted to be a Cornhusker out of high school, didn't get the opportunity. Then Christian Jones, who knows he can step in and potentially earn rotation snaps right away behind those two guys. But yeah, I mean it's those top two guys, those are dudes, those are real dudes, and so they'll figure it out. Rob Dvorak will figure it out behind those two and do his development coaching just like he has done the past two seasons. So yeah, it's looking like that top unit at inside linebacker Vincent Shavers and Marquise Watson Trent. I mean, it's looking really good. It's looking pretty solid. It's just behind them, that depth is just going to be something to figure out.
for sure. And yeah, that's a full off season kind of. We've got to address that. So that'll probably do it for us, I think. Any other thoughts on this linebacker room in general? Kind of looking back on 24 and a quick look ahead to 25.
Yeah, I mean, we mentioned it once before, but Javen Wright potentially a seventh season. Rob Dvorak mentioned that the program is trying to get that for him just because of
That
all the
helped the depth
injuries.
a
And
ton.
yeah, that would absolutely be huge.
Yeah,
It would have that kind of
you
John
feel a
Bullock
lot better
esque.
about the room if he's back.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I remember last offseason when John Bullock announced he was coming back. We didn't really necessarily like know it. At least I didn't think it was like, wow, John Bullock is coming back. That's crazy. But like during the season, you saw like how much better he got. He just kept getting better and better as just an old veteran guy running around, being violent. That proved to be a huge return addition. I think Javen Wright would be right along that same lines. So we'll see what comes of that. But Yeah, John Bullock, Mekhi Bear, Stephon Thompson, all departing. It's just the depth piece that I'm wondering about. But there's some interesting young guys in there like Christian Jones.
For sure. I kind of wonder what my one last thought for me. Linebackers, quiet as it's kept, had an opportunity to kind of run around free because of the play up front from Nash Hotmacher and Ty Robinson.
Yeah.
Both those guys. Ty obviously was the game record, but
Hmm.
Nash taking up as many blocks as he did on a snap to snap basis
Hmm.
really opened things up for John Bullock and Mekhi Bear. And I've had good defensive minds tell me in the past. You look at productive linebackers. A lot of it's because of what happens up front. And I feel like a lot
Yeah.
of John Bullock's play this year was a result of Nash. And so,
Hmm.
I wonder next year what that looks like. No Nash and Ty up front. How
Hmm.
productive can they be? How many blocks? They're going to have to defeat blocks. They're going to have to take on
Yeah.
blocks and kind of beat those. But I think they can be effective. I'm interested to see kind of how this room continues to grow and evolve. And I think, again, Rob Dvorak's a rising star. I think he's a good
Yep.
coach, one of the better coaches on the roster, in my opinion, just position coaches wise. And yeah, I think and who knows? I mean, we're talking about this depth thing. Maybe Dawson Merritt develops a little faster than we expect. Because again, the question with him is not anything on the field because he's got the on-field stuff. It's
Hmm.
the off-field kind of just adding some weight, adapting
Just
to the
looking
speed of the
like a
game,
college football
looking
linebacker.
like
He
a
needs
college
to get
football player.
bigger. He needs to
Correct.
get heavier. He needs to get stronger. That's how I'm
Right.
seeing it.
But if that happens quick for him, and we've seen it happen
Sure.
in one offseason for
I
guys,
mean,
even one
Vincent Shavers
spring.
gained like 20 pounds in his
Right.
first. He got here in January. He was starting fall camp and he was like already 225 pounds. It's like, holy crap.
Right. So you get to that. You again, that happens for Dawson Merritt. We're seeing another like, hey, this guy's going to be in the rotation and
Yeah.
play fast, play physical. He's got the IQ, all of that. So we'll see. It's a long off season ahead for this group, but I'm intrigued by the future of this room.
Yeah. And then obviously we mentioned it 19 times before, but Deshaun McCullough, a lot depends on him, like where the staff decides to put him. I'm sure it'll be multiple places. He's too athletic to keep in one spot, probably. So yeah, a lot of it depends on Deshaun McCullough. He can play inside, he can play that jack outside linebacker. So a lot of this puzzle depends on where you put him first.
For sure. So that'll probably do it for us. We'll be back with a DB's episode with a lot to get to in that one as well. So stay tuned for that, and we will be back.